Blessings, everyone. Thank you for joining me today. And I'm really glad that a friend of mine that I've met on Twitter is joining me, Joseph the Dad. And I'll link his Twitter name in the video description so you can follow him on if you have Twitter, if you have a Twitter account. What I mean, I follow a lot of people on Twitter. But I think why you stuck out is that I read your tweets and I agree with them a, a lot. I would say 100% of the time. But you're very uh how do I put it? You're very bold and you're very straightforward, but you're also prudent and I would say tactful, something that I have trouble with. So you have a good sense of uh, how to speak the truth, but how to speak it well. So thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Joseph. I appreciate. It's also known as X now. I'm not used to that
Oh,
yet. I'm getting
oh,
there.
that's right. That's right. I forgot X. So
Yes.
Joseph is a convert to Orthodoxy as I am as well. I did a little research on you. So um, you can explain what some of these things are because I don't know what they are. Um, you were raised in the Assembly of God
Hmm.
Church, and
Yes.
then you became, I don't know what this is, either a oneness Pentecostal.
Well, I
That
was raised
is
Oneness
that?
Pentecostal first. Then I
Oh, okay.
became. My parents started attending an Assembly of God church. Yes.
Okay.
So
And then Catholicism for 13 years. Wow.
yes.
So, and you were a late Dominican, which I find interesting too,
Y-
when you were
Yes.
Catholic. So could could you talk a little bit about your conversion? Like, so you were raised Pentecostal as a child.
Yes.
So you were baptized as I'm not sure how they do that, as a baby or as a child, or how do they
Well,
do
they
that?
believe in most of them believe in believers' baptism. So, and in the Oneness Pentecostal Church, they're non-Trinitarians, so they
Okay.
don't believe in the Trinity. So they baptize in Jesus' name. So I
Oh,
was baptized in Jesus' name when I was a young child, a professed believer as a young child.
all
And
right.
then when we started attending the Assembly of God Church, um, I was baptized in the Trinity. Yeah.
Okay. And where was this? Where in
This
the
is all
United?
in Mississippi. Yeah.
So the Bible Belt.
The Bible Belt. Probably 90% Baptist,
Okay.
uh,
Okay.
8% Methodist, and everything else is a little bit mixed in.
Okay.
But
Okay.
that's just my guess. It's changed a lot in the last 30 years. I mean, it's really changed.
Okay.
Mississippi has.
Okay. Now, what's the Assembly of God? Now, how did you go to that? What is that? What is that?
So the Assembly of God is, I guess, what you would call a mainline Pentecostal church. They're
Okay.
more um, they believe in the Trinity. They believe in most things about, we used to joke and call us Baptist-costals. Basically we were Baptists with speaking in tongues, kind of, you got a
Okay.
lot of the similar beliefs, evangelical, but they believe in the gifts of the Holy Spirit. They were formed in the early 20th century after the start of the Pentecostal movement. And I think it was around 1914. I may be wrong, but they're a fast growing denomination around the world. In some parts of the world, it's really, really big.
What help me out here because I was born and raised Roman Catholic. So what's the difference between like a Pentecostal, religion or
Mhm.
church as opposed to like a Protestant religion, like some people would know as like Baptist or Lutheran or something like that? What?
Well, the Pentecostal movement, by large, not entirely, came from the Methodist movement. So if you're familiar with the Methodist movement,
Oh,
especially in
no.
the
Okay.
19th century,
Okay.
there was this move among there, America always goes through these renewal, these great revivals, and so in the late 19th century, there was this hunger for holiness, hunger for a second move of God in your life. And so that desire over a few decades kind of coalesced in this prayer for the renewal of the gifts of the Holy Spirit. There was this understanding that God, these were the last days in the book of Acts. Peter says in the last days God will pour out His Spirit, right? And so there was this understanding, this desire for the gifts. And so they did come out of the Protestant movement. So you would classify Pentecostals as Protestants, but it's kind of like Protestants plus. They had that desire for the gifts of the Spirit, and there was this famous event in Kansas where this Bible teacher, I think his name was Parham, he and his students were praying for this second gift, the outpouring of the Holy Spirit in the latter days is what they were praying for, and they had this experience of speaking in tongues, and it kind of spread like wildfire. I mean, it's like millions and millions and millions of people are part of this movement, and it started in Kansas in the United States in the early 20th century. But we consider ourselves Protestants, but I mean, going back, there was this understanding in the Pentecostal church that we were the church of the apostles. We used that term a lot. We called ourselves apostolic, and we would say we were apostolic. We were preaching and teaching and praying and believing like the apostles were. That desire, that word stuck in my mind. And so when I went in search of what apostolicity meant, I started reading the early church fathers. That word, that understanding of I wanted to be in the apostolic church, kind of set me on the path to being Orthodox eventually. But that's
Mm,
Pentecostalism. They really do
okay.
believe that they're the church of the Book of Acts. You know?
Okay. The in Catholicism there's something sort of similar. It's called the charismatic movement. And
Yes.
that's where I went to a couple of these services where they do the speaking in tongues. And then they also did the slaying in the spirit, I guess, where the priest
Yeah.
was laying hands and people would fall back. So that kind of stuff I saw. And then I just remembered when you were talking in, I think it was um Father Seraphim Rose's Orthodoxy and the Religion of the Future, he talked about the charismatic movement,
Yes.
and he talked about the speaking in tongues and that kind of stuff, people acting oddly. I've seen some of these things like on YouTube where you see people, I don't know if they're trying to like cast out demons, but where people start to shake
Oh yeah.
and so that's is that part of that tradition that
Definitely.
okay,
Yes.
okay.
So the movement I was part of, so just like a lot of Protestantism, there were splits early, and one of those was the Oneness Pentecostals. They split off. Their leader claimed to have a vision that the Trinity wasn't real, so
Mm,
that the Trinity was a false teaching, right? So that's the Oneness Pentecostals, and then you had the Assemblies of God, the Church of God, and then non-denominational Pentecostals. And then in the 1960s, you had this start of what we would have called was called the charismatic movement, which kind of like found roots and found like a toehold in mainline Protestant and Catholic churches. Now, the kind of strain of Pentecostalism I was raised in, we would look askance at the charismatics. Those guys are crazy. But we were doing similar things in our services, very similar. But I came from the Pentecostal holiness movement where there was a lot of emphasis on outward appearances, staying away from worldliness. Don't go to movie theaters. Don't have a
um,
television. Women were long dresses, dressed modestly, long hair, no makeup. That was the movement that I came out of. And so they would look at the charismatic movement as worldly, that they
mm,
were being embraced by the world, and we were set apart from the world. So
mm,
there's still that dichotomy in the Pentecostal movement between the Pentecostal holiness and the more charismatic groups.
mm. Where I live here in California, we have a lot of Seventh-day Adventists. That almost sounds like Seventh-day Adventists a little bit because they're not supposed to dance or wear makeup or jewelry, I think, or
I
and
think the Seventh Day Adventists and
they
all
don't
that
drink.
kind of came out of the same milieu.
Okay,
But yeah, I know very little about the Seventh Day
okay,
Adventists, so I can't speak to that.
okay, and they don't drink alcohol or
Oh no, no drinking.
yeah, the Mormons too don't
Yeah,
drink. Nah,
yeah. But that was that whole 19th century America. It's amazing all the different religions and churches and faith that came from that period of time.
yeah, it's
And I would
interesting.
I would classify Pentecostalism in that, even though they came early 20th century, but we kind of came out of that same feeling, in
Mm,
America.
okay. Now, how how do you go from that to Roman Catholicism? Because I'm, you know, there's not, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's not like a lot of Roman Catholicism in the South, I would assume. It's not, it's like a minority
You have
religion.
pockets like Louisiana, for
Yeah,
example,
New Orleans.
the southern part of Mississippi along the coast. You have a lot of Catholics. You do have pockets. I always joked I knew one Catholic kid in high school, and he was the bad kid. It's like
Ooh.
he wasn't a great poster boy for Catholicism. Um, we would say the Baptists picked on the Pentecostals, and and everybody picked on the Catholics. That's what we would
Oh,
say. But
oh,
so they were very much a minority. And when I was a youth pastor. I didn't go to seminary. In the tradition that we grew up in, you were just called to preach, right? You would say, I was called to preach. They would set you to preaching and teaching. And yeah. So, anyway, I was a very young man, just got married and moved to Charlotte, North Carolina as a youth pastor and a school teacher at a Christian school. And we were in this Pentecostal holiness movement. And I remember I was a history major in college. I love to
mm,
research, but like a lot of Protestants, my understanding of church history was like very shallow. And as a Pentecostal, you kind of believe like the church fell away early, Constantine, the evil Constantine, and then Martin Luther, he kind of got it back, but it wasn't until we really believe that it wasn't until the 20th century, 2,000 years later, that the outpouring of the Holy Spirit, that the church was like restored, right? This
mm,
restoration understanding of church history. And I remember my associate pastor challenged me to read the early church fathers. He didn't call them that. He just wanted some examples in the early church about holiness doctrine, like how women should dress, wearing makeup, things like that. That's what he set me to do.
mm.
So I had my task, and I got on the internet. I didn't know anything about it. Uh, I'm sure you're familiar with the website New Advent, where you can read all the church fathers.
Yeah, it's very good.
Yeah, and I started just reading the church fathers, and my mind got blown. And I was like, I thought I was apostolic, and I'm reading these very early church writers talking about their faith, and it didn't look like my faith. They were speaking about, the Eucharist and about baptismal regeneration, which we didn't believe in. And these were men and women who were persecuted and died for their faith, and they were close to the apostles. Some were taught by the apostles,
Mm,
and my mind was blown, and I was very thrown by that. And that was
mm.
around the year 2000.
Wow.
And I was so thrown that I really had a crisis of faith. I remember we went to uh, I don't know if you've ever seen these campus preachers where they would go on college campuses and just harangue people and get a crowd and like say the
Mm,
most outlandish things, to
yeah.
get a crowd. And we went to the University of North Carolina in Charlotte to do this. And I just remember speaking and thinking at the same time I was speaking, I don't believe what I'm saying. And so it was a challenging. Here I was as a leader, right? And so I quietly, we were not from from North Carolina, so we I resigned and I found a job in IT in Georgia. We moved to Georgia, and if it wasn't for the internet, I never would have been anything. But the internet just opened the world up to me, and I started learning. And I would go in the chat rooms, and I really became enamored with Orthodoxy first.
Huh.
So I was reading and studying about Orthodoxy, and I remember getting really excited about the Orthodox faith. And there was no Orthodox church around me, and I went. I remember very clearly. I went on a drive like to Chattanooga to hear Frederica Matthews Green give a talk, and she was the first real life Orthodox person I ever met. I'll never forget that. She was very formative in my understanding. Um, so I never went to the Orthodox Church until we finally moved back to Mississippi, and even then, the closest Orthodox church was an hour and a half
Oh,
away.
yeah.
But me and my now godfather, we would I wrote the priest, and he put me in touch with my godfather now, and I would write up, and my godfather is very wise, and we would just talk and talk and talk, and I would I became a catechumen in the Orthodox Church in 2004, and then everybody says, "Well, what happened?" What happened was my own weaknesses, Um, I fell away from the catechumenate. I stopped going to church. My sins, when you sin, sometimes the devil's really good at making you
Yeah.
ashamed, and so I was ashamed. I guess I was ashamed that I had failed, and being so far away made it easy to stay away at that time. And over a period of time, I decided, well, I do want to go to church, but I justified in my mind. I'm like, well, the Catholic Church kind of teaches these same things about the Eucharist, about
Right.
baptismal regeneration,
Right.
and I thought that they were an apostolic church, and so I started attending the local Catholic church, and eventually I became Catholic. I was Catholic for 13 years, and then uh, through a series of events, things that were going on in the church. I can get into those if you want to. It was a gut wrenching period of 2 years where I didn't know if I needed to stay or leave, and um, I came to a point. It came to a head where I had to make a decision, or I was just going to go crazy. It was just that. Uh, it felt like a crisis, honestly. And I'm sure you might
Hmm.
be very familiar with this. A lot of Catholics who come to this point. And so I reached out to Father Elect. At that point, they had a mission had started in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, which is closer to where I live, and it just was easier to go to church. And Father Alexis Baldwin was in the area, and it was just fortuitous at that point where and COVID hit, which made it, they weren't having church anyway, the Catholics weren't. And so it was easy just to like kind of
Yeah.
slide over
Ne-
and
Okay.
explore this a little bit. And then finally I made the decision in 2019 to fulfill my catechumenate. It was a long catechumenate, 15 years.
Yeah. This is
Yeah.
interesting. We got a similar trajectory. Net, clear something up for me.
Mm.
So when you left, I don't want to say left, but when you were questioning Pentecostalism and then you were looking at Orthodoxy, but you didn't become Orthodox, you became Catholic.
Yeah.
Was that just because the Orthodox Church wasn't available? I was confused about why
Well,
why at that point you didn't become Orthodox, but you became Catholic. I was a little confused.
Well, I kind of like glossed over it. I had a period of time where I, in my personal life, I went through a real dark time,
Oh, I'm sorry.
spiritually. This It's really true. I really do believe you hear people warn catechumens on the internet, that you'll be attacked,
Yeah.
and I was, and I fell away spiritually, and I felt real ashamed of my failure as a person, as a catechumen. And instead of falling on God's mercy and going back to church and speaking with the priest because it was so far away. I justified in my mind staying away, so I stayed away because of my sin. And eventually, over a period of a few more months, I started waking up to, hey, you need to, repent. You need to get back on track. But I was still ashamed. And the Catholic Church was closer. Instead of an hour and a half away, it was 10 minutes
Oh,
away.
I see. I see.
And
Okay. Okay.
and so, and I was kind of ignorant about a lot of things then. I thought that the Catholic Church was different than it ended up being. I wanted the
Yeah.
Catholic Church to
Yeah.
be what Orthodoxy was.
Mm.
And for 13 years, there was this conflict in my mind. It's like, why aren't we like we should be? And
That's right.
yeah,
So you were like me. You tried to make it work.
I did.
Now, did
I jumped both feet in. I did everything. I was an RCIA teacher. I was a
wow.
choir member. I went to Cursillo. I was a Cursillo leader. I was uh, I was in diaconate formation when I left. I was in my yeah. I was being formed as a permanent deacon, and it was I was all in
You
until I
were
wasn't.
you were Knights of Columbus, you said too,
I was
in one
nice
year
to
too.
Columbus.
So you
Yes.
did, yeah, you were hardcore. You weren't a casual Catholic. You were committed.
No, I was committed.
Okay.
Yeah.
You went to the traditional Latin Mass as well? The
No, our
yeah.
diocese. Well, I did when I could. We had
Okay.
like in a lot of like and it's according to your bishop. And
Yeah.
at the time, we when I was Catholic, I think we went through three bishops, and none of them were really like
Uh,
super favorable to the traditional Latin Mass. But
uh,
occasionally, we would have someone celebrate it, and I would go.
uh,
Um, the last bishop, the current bishop, he's a little bit friendlier to it, and one of my dear friends and favorite priests, Catholic priests. He celebrates the traditional Latin Mass, but it wasn't something I did regularly because it just
okay.
wasn't close. It
Okay.
was I had to drive almost 2 hours to it.
Yeah, me too. At a time, and but I always uh I can relate to Catholics who at least know what the traditional Latin Mass is and at least attended it, because there are Catholics out there who have no idea that there's like a traditional like movement in the
Yeah,
church. They're just very uh uh what do you call it? They're just very used to the Novus Ordo Mass and the
yeah. It's
way.
just not on their it's not on their radar at all. I
Yeah.
remember having these conversations with people. It's like every I think every Catholic parish has like this little group of like 5 or 6, maybe 10 people uh, who who are like you. You kind of gravitate to these people who are enamored with the Latin Mass, who want more traditional Catholicism, and you talk to other people in your parish, and they think you're crazy. They're like
Yeah.
they don't understand that desire for traditionalism. I can't tell you how many times I heard, well, they turn their backs to the congregation, right? They just had no idea. And
So
in
do
our
the
particular diet,
so do the
yeah,
Orthodox.
yeah, so did Christians everywhere,
Yeah. Yeah.
for a long time. But in our diocese, you would have a greater chance to hear a Baptist hymn at a Catholic church than a Catholic hymn. They would
Yeah.
play Protestant music. You had all the instruments, and
Guitar.
um, oh yeah, it was just I called us uh, Baptist with statues.
Yeah. It's
Uh,
true. The interesting thing too is since I become Orthodox is that I've noticed that there's more Orthodox people that sort of understand or at least aware of traditional Catholics in the Catholic Church than there were Catholics that were aware of traditional Catholics in the Catholic Church. I don't know if that makes sense, but
yeah,
because it's like so many and they're not all that way, but so many traditional Catholics have come from the Catholic Church to Orthodoxy. So then, therefore, Orthodox people kind of know that that world where
Yes.
a lot of Catholics aren't even aware that that is happening. So it's kind of funny that
Yeah,
that the
definitely.
that the Orthodox are more clued in about what's going on in the Catholic Church than a lot of Catholics are.
Well, I think it's interesting because if you ask a Catholic, I just was told this last night, by the way. I was with some friends from the Catholic Church, and uh, she said that I just went to a different division. It's like a lot of
Really?
Catholics don't. Well, you have
Wow.
this understanding in the Catholic Church, modern Catholic Church, that you're Catholic, you just don't know you're Catholic. This
Really?
idea that, oh
Okay.
yeah, like
Hmm.
well, there's this understanding, especially since Vatican II, that if you're
Hmm.
baptized, you're part of the church in some way, some intangential way, some
Hmm.
hidden way. And so I
Yeah.
got a lot of that when I changed to the Orthodox Church. Well, you're just going to a different, I, well, even John Paul II called the Orthodox Church the second lung, right? And so some Catholics had no problem with me becoming Orthodox because they have this very loosey goosey idea of what the church is. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting that I got when I became Orthodox from Catholicism. I have to say, I got the least amount of pushback from Catholic priests because I think Catholic priests, because they're sort of inside and they
Mm,
see how things work, I think they understand that they were just happy that people don't lose the faith because I think they've seen so many people
yeah.
in the Catholic Church get burned or you know uh,
Yes.
disappointed or whatever disenchanted or with the religion and they lose faith in God altogether. So the Catholic priests, none of the Catholic priests were particularly upset that I know that I became Orthodox. They're just glad I
Yeah.
didn't lose the faith because they've seen, I think most Catholics nowadays, especially Catholics that were born and raised in the church, maybe not so much converts, but they just walk away from everything completely
Yeah.
and don't practice. That's it. It's over.
Yeah. That's true. I'm just trying to think of same thing. I didn't have any. Now, I wasn't really close to a lot of Catholic priests because of the way that um, they move through your parish. It's like they're there for a few years, they move them around. But through the Cursillo movement, I did get close to a couple of Catholic priests, and neither one of them gave me, they gave me some advice, but they didn't really react negatively. Now, I did have some close friends who were in the late Dominican movement because they took their faith a lot more seriously than,
Yeah.
you know, if you're going to do a lay order in the Catholic Church, you're taking your faith seriously, and so
Yeah.
uh, I think I disappointed some of them, and of course, I was in diaconate formation. That was a tough letter to
Wow.
write to the
Wow.
bishop, right? To withdraw myself from formation, but. Um, I will say, I think I tweeted this the other day. I don't regret becoming Orthodox, not 1 second. You know, I do miss the friends, but we still hang out sometimes. Like last night, I got to hang out with a few of them. But my real true desire is for everybody to become Orthodox.
Yeah.
Uh, I think everybody should be Orthodox.
So so it's a little more complicated for you because I'm a single guy, I got no kids. So I hate to use the word spiritual journey. It sounds so stupid. But so when you're going through this journey, you got a wife and kids. So
Yes.
where were they you
Yeah.
know, because
This is a tough.
you can't just
No.
become, well, I guess you could. It's more complicated, I guess, if you became Orthodox and they
Mhm.
stayed Catholic. So
Well, here's the kicker, Joseph, is that they never became Catholic.
oh, Okay. So
Yeah,
what was your family? What
so
were
my
they?
wife and I were both Pentecostal Assembly of God, and when I became interested in Orthodoxy, I
Oh,
I joke around. I joke and say I was an ortho bro before there were ortho bros. I was real like gung ho. I was like really excited, and I came on a little bit too strong, I think, and I didn't let the faith change me. Well, the goal of Orthodoxy is to be made in the image of God, and I think I was just collecting data points and learning, and I was very excited, and so I didn't do a real good job approaching her about Orthodoxy, and I was advised by my priest that received me as a catechumen. You know, he was hesitant to receive me as a catechumen without my wife on board, and so he made me wait a long time, um, and then he eventually received me as a catechumen because she just was not interested at all, and and then you kind of have you get this, uh, and then she was not on board with the change. I became Catholic. She didn't even come to my chrismation, as a Catholic. She just was very negative toward it. Eventually, over time, she
wow.
her resistance has fallen. She'll come to church with me from time to time. It's difficult. I had this conversation with someone the other day, a young person at church, and they asked me, uh, how do you do it? God's grace, obviously, but it's not something I recommend. I
Yeah.
do really truly believe if you're an Orthodox person, you should marry an Orthodox. That's a teaching of the church. Orthodox
Hmm.
should marry Orthodox, and because it is difficult, but we've made it work. Her resistance to the Orthodox Church, to traditional Christianity, has lessened,
Oh, God bless her.
uh, and my family does attend church from time to time with me.
God bless.
Thank God. Yes, but it's not been easy, and I kind
When
of yeah. Well, I feel like some people would say, well, you you've been loosey goosey. 13 years as a Catholic doesn't seem like that's I was pretty dedicated, but um, you know, my goal is to be Orthodox longer than I wasn't Orthodox. I want to die
Oh,
Orthodox.
that's good. I like that.
Yeah.
So when you were, I don't want to belabor it. I'm just curious.
Mhm.
When you were Catholic for the 13 years, what was your family doing? What did they not practice a religion or?
No, my wife stayed Assembly of God, and
Oh my God.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and my kids would come with me sometimes, and they would go with her. I'm sure. See, this is very confusing for your children, and this is why I advise against mixed
Yeah.
marriages. You need I believe, but my wife was very patient with me and
Oh, God bless.
understanding of me. But I won't say I would have loved, and I pray for it even today for her, for us to be on the same page, and I would love for her to be Orthodox. So your audience can pray for her. That'd be
Yeah,
great.
I will. Sounds like a good lady.
She
Now,
is a good lady.
yeah, I wanted to look at some of your tweets because, and I think I picked about eight. There's a lot of good ones, but
Uh,
these are
I probably
the
won't remember any of
nah,
them.
they're not that old. But I wanted to talk about these because well, I kind of picked these, and I hope I picked them in some sort of rational order. Can you see that, Joseph?
I can.
There you are. Joseph the Dad. Is that a choke key icon?
Yes.
I gotta find that. I don't know where that is because I've got the I've got the the Orthodox cross, but yeah, I gotta find that.
I think it's just I did rosary and it
Okay.
showed up.
Oh, okay, thank you. I'll read this for people maybe that are just listening, not watching. This is a tweet from Joseph. The rational part of me wants every traditional Catholic to become Orthodox. There are thousands of us former Catholics who will make this transition as painless as possible. the non-rational part of me realizes this is what the bastards want to happen. They want the good people to leave so they can wear the a Roman Catholic church like a skin suit. Honestly, it's happening anyway. Save yourselves and your families. Oh, I can relate to that too, because I would like, I mean, most of my friends and family are Roman Catholic. I would like people, yes, to become Orthodox because I feel it's just a healthier, it presents a healthier way to have a relationship with God. I felt like in Roman Catholicism, it was just impossible for me because there was so much lying and gaslighting and manipulation and deception and mind games and all this stuff. Um, but then, yeah, what sort of denuded, uh, bone is going to be left in Roman Catholicism if I don't want to say good people, but all the people of faith leave because there's and it kind of it sounds like this in this tweet that part of my heart, I mean, I still have a heart. I don't want to say I left my heart in the Roman Catholic Church. I didn't, but part of I have a heart for the not so much the institutional church. I feel like the institutional church is totally corrupt, but I have a heart for the people in the church because there are a lot of very good people. There's good priests. I can't say there's any good bishops. There's one, but he just got canned. So there's one decent cardinal, Cardinal Burke, but yeah, it's sort of a there's a desire for the conversion of people from the Catholic Church, but there's also a realization that there there is something good there, and you'd hate to see it lost or destroyed. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it's kind of like how it's kind of like I kind of felt that way as a Catholic too. We were in this beautiful structure that was built by immigrants to our area with their blood, sweat, and tears, poor people who came here, right, and built this structure. And then that faith that they had was just like so disrespected and disregarded and treated as like not even a relic you would treasure, right? Not that as refuse almost.
Mm,
Uh, there were parts. It's like in the 70s. I wasn't Catholic in the 70s, but I saw pictures of our parish before the Recovation of the
mm,
70s. I remember visiting another parish in our diocese, and I looked, and they had the most beautiful um, uh, decor in the church, and some of it I was told came from my parish, the parish that I attended, and when
mm,
they renovated in the 70s, and they just took all the beauty out of it. I felt like that, and that's what I felt like in this tweet. Like I would have loved uh, that structure, that thing that was built. It you would hate to see it disregarded. And there's something about the Catholic Church. They still hold on to some elements of orthodoxy. The dream, of course, is for repentance of the Catholic Church, that the Bishop of Rome repents of his errors, that he becomes Orthodox, that they repent of modernism, and they reform themselves, and come back into the fold of Orthodoxy. But I feel like, um, especially the veil came off in the last couple of years before I became Orthodox. I had a couple things happen. I'll explain two things. One is that we had a former priest. He was an associate priest of our parish. He was caught molesting a child. He is now in the prison in Mississippi. So this is a man that I received communion from, that I went to confession to,
oh dear
and
Lord.
so
He
I
was
had
he
come.
he was molesting a boy. I saw a tweet
Yes,
that, yeah,
yes, a
horrible,
young
horrible.
boy. and
But didn't you say he
and
was he was caught by the mother?
yes, caught by the mother. Yeah, caught by the mother. She was a Hispanic family. A lot of Hispanic families, they are very like pro priest, and so
Yes.
there was a lot of like animosity toward the mother, you know, uh,
Yes.
for turning in the priest, right? And boy, that opened because I had become Catholic after the whole 2000 early 2000s, and I had this image in my mind that the church had, we had that squashed, right? That was over with.
Yeah.
Um, and then the McCarrick scandal happened, and that just scandalized me to no end that this predator priest rose in rank with everyone knowing exactly what it was, and even after was given honors, given responsibilities by Pope Francis, and a lot of his friends and people he personally picked are now cardinals in the Catholic Church. I mean, it really scandalized me.
Big shots. Kupich, McElroy,
Yes,
they all came out of that swamp with McCarrick. Yeah.
yeah. And I think the light bulb went off for me. It was during one of the, another, the whole Pope Francis thing. He's a scandal to himself. I think it was one after one of his interviews with that atheist journalist. He kept giving these interviews to this atheist who didn't take notes, and he would say stuff like, "Pope doesn't believe in hell," and it's like, and like scandalized Catholics around the world, and the Vatican would not correct the record at all. And
No, that's
we were
deliberate.
at diaconate. We were doing our diaconate formation. We would go on a weekend with all the other men and their wives, and my wife participated, by the way. And we were there, and we were all hanging out at one of the nightly hangout meetings after all the education stuff was done. And one of the guys asked a general question. He's like, "What would you do if the Pope did X?" And I can't remember exactly what he said, but it's like basically, if the Pope changed doctrine, what would you do? And everybody had their answer, and I said, "I'd be Orthodox." And it shocked everybody. It
Oh.
shocked the room. But it was just a natural reaction to me. But I actually had someone come to me later and say,
Oh
that
man.
shocked me. I could never leave the church, and
Yeah.
it really was I guess I scandalized people by saying that.
That flew
But
that flew like a lead balloon.
yeah, but that was such a natural reaction to me, and it kind of like opened my eyes to what my heart was thinking already,
Yeah.
and it started me to the process of like, you know really examining, like, why am I Catholic?
Yeah.
Why am I not Orthodox? Because the beauty of the Orthodox Church, the truth of the Orthodox Church,
Yeah.
the whole holistic. I call the Orthodox Church holistic. It's for the whole person. It feels like a hospital. It should be. It's a
Hmm.
hospital for souls, and the Catholics would say that, but I didn't feel that. In the Catholic Church, it feels very forensic. Like,
Hmm.
uh, I remember, never really understanding um, all the rules about getting grace. Um, uh, you can wear the brown scapula. You could do this. You can say these prayers. There's a lot of like tick boxes. It felt like in the Catholic Church. It felt like the Catholic Church was an Excel spreadsheet. I had to keep up with things to get an indulgence. You had to do this. You had to do that. I never understood that about the Catholic Church. The Orthodox Church treats the whole man. Uh, you know, I have a blog that's defunct, and I called that blog "Becoming Hinged." We have this phrase in English, is coming unhinged. Where
Hmm.
you're going crazy, right?
Hmm.
And I'm I feel like in Orthodoxy, I'm becoming hinged. I'm becoming attached to who I should be and
Like
how
that.
God created us to be, right? But it's a process. It's not happening, immediately. But thank God, I think that I think God's grace is working. Is working.
Yeah. Yeah. I had the same kind of, I loved everything you said. I mean, I'm nodding here like one of those nodders. Um, I had the same kind of moment is when, I always told my friends that, I would leave the church if I had two non-negotiables, ordination of women or gay marriage. And in 2018 or whenever, when they started doing that stuff in Germany, I said, I'm done.
Yeah, and no
Done.
correction. They'll
No.
kick out Bishop Strickland, right,
Exactly.
for mean tweets, you know. But
Exactly.
you can guess play gay unions all day long.
Exactly. Here's another tweet by Joseph. When I became Roman Catholic, I thought I was getting tradition and unity of faith. It took many years to finally admit that the Roman Catholic Church was almost bereft of both. You kind of mentioned that, but uh, that's kind of where I was coming from too, is when uh in 1999, when I left all the gay stuff I was doing in San Francisco, there's a big Russian Orthodox presence with the cathedral and St. John Maximovich and stuff. And I was sort of aware of it, but I kind of was like, but I really didn't even consider Orthodoxy. It was sort of in the very recesses of my mind. But I was kind of like, Orthodoxy is too ethnic. It's too, you know, fractured and all this stuff. And I thought, oh, uh, Catholicism has all these different cultures and it sort of brings everybody together and it's so unifying and all this stuff. But then, when I was in the Catholic Church for 20 years, and I saw how fractured it was, especially with like the gay stuff. It was like, well, there's a traditional priest over, I can't remember where he is, over kind of near Cow Hollow or whatever. Um, and this Catholic priest is very traditional, and he'll, teach from the catechism. And then there's this Catholic priest over in Castro, the gay neighborhood, who, says people are born gay, God made you gay, gay is beautiful, he'll bless your same-sex marriage and everything. So there's like no unity, like illusion of unity. It's a mess. So that's kind of what you said in
Exactly.
in that tweet. So true,
Yeah,
true, true.
and the I agree with all that. And then the tradition part, I mean, if the church is not there to teach tradition, to hand on, what they received, then what good is it? I just remember feeling almost like it's like begging to for the tradition of the church and not being given it at all. You know,
Mhm,
um,
mhm,
I I really didn't know what a spiritual father was until I became Orthodox.
yeah.
You know, you had this idea of spiritual direction in the Catholic Church, but I never had that. Um, so I do think this idea of handing on the faith is I was having this conversation last night with a good friend. She teaches CCD in a Catholic church, and she was bemoaning the fact that her third grade class did not know what a sacrament was. Right?
Uh-oh.
There's, yeah, um, there is a there is a failure in the modern Catholic Church in handing on the faith, and
Uh-oh.
God forbid that we do the same in the Orthodox Church. We need good practice to teach our kids. That's the lesson. Don't be ashamed of your faith. Hand it on.
Yeah. It's interesting because Catholic priests are celibate, and I think part of that argument for celibacy is that, well, Catholic priests can dedicate 100% of their time to the parish, but I have found that Orthodox priests who, in the parish are typically married, the wife and family, tend to be more available. So sort of it's counterintuitive And I don't know why. I'm not quite sure why that is, but anyway.
I have found the exact same thing. I found like the married deacons of the Catholic Church worked more for the church than the priest did, you know?
Mm,
Yeah.
mm.
Like,
Yeah,
um,
I don't know. I can't figure it out. This is you.
mm.
Well, of course it's you, duh. But you're talking about yourself here. I was Catholic, Knights of Columbus, diaconate candidate, choir member, catechist, CCD teacher, Curcio, rector, etc. I did it all. And then Francis McCarrick and everything else. In 2020, I became Orthodox. Comparatively, it looks outwardly chaotic, but I found peace and joy. Join me. It's really nice. I think we kind of talked about that. You're oh, go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, the outwardly chaotic, you see this a lot,
Yeah, that's it. That's what I was gonna
especially
ask you about.
especially in on Twitter or X, whatever it's called. Is like the Catholic apologists. They love to say, "Well, which Orthodox church?" You know, they'll say stuff
Exactly.
like that. And it does look chaotic, but you read the early church histories, it was kind of chaotic, but God works through people. And even in the early church, Paul opposed Peter, and Peter opposed Paul, and Paul had a falling out uh, with his companions over other people. It was just like, it was chaotic, but God worked through people. And um, the Catholic Church has this outward unity in the
Mm,
Pope, but
mm,
they do not have inward
yeah.
unity and peace. And it was almost the opposite in the Orthodox Church. You look at it and you're like, oh, the Russians hate the Greeks and the Greeks, but when you're in it, it's peace and joy,
Yeah.
you know, taste and see, that's, I really wish I don't have words. I really don't have words to convey. I wish I did have words to convey what the Orthodox Church means, and the joy that it
Yeah.
brings someone to really, um, you know, wade into the deep water of orthodoxy,
Yeah.
and to be embraced by all the saints and all the church, working together for our salvation. And I just am very glad I'm Orthodox, I guess.
Yeah. I like peace and joy too, because I have found a certain peace in Orthodoxy and Catholicism. I was
I
always
never felt,
always
yeah,
upset. I was always upset about something. And I've noticed that I have found that I don't see the Orthodox like interdenominational squad. I don't see, I don't know. It feels like the Orthodox people I know are so busy with their own church.
yeah,
They're not really like not unconcerned about what's going on the other side, but of the hill or whatever, but not preoccupied in Catholicism was very exhausting sometimes because especially in the traditional groups there was constant discussion about this bishop and this cardinal and of course the pope, but just what this priest said and it's exhausting. Really it's hard to find peace in that because you're you're uh perpetually being agitated.
yeah. And then people would say things like, "Well, just don't let it bother you. Don't think about it. Why are you thinking about it?"
Well,
Well, because you tell me that the most important person in the world is the Pope, and I'm not supposed to care about what he's saying and what he's doing. Don't worry about the Pope. Well,
exactly.
he's the vicar of Christ. You're telling me that I have to, believe what he teaches. I want to.
Exactly.
It was gaslighting. You use that word. It was very much like that.
The funny thing is, most Roman Catholic trads could keep 90% of their liturgy if they became Orthodox, but they won't give up their Pope who demands they give up 100% of it. I love that. I thought that was so cool. So
Yeah.
because I was a trad Catholic, when it wasn't a big, I'll say this real quick because I've said it 1,000 times. When I went from like Novus Ordo guitar, 60s folk, mass to the traditional Latin mass, it was a big shock. But going from the traditional Latin mass to the Orthodox liturgy, it felt kind of like natural. It wasn't like, whoa, this is really different. I mean, there's definitely things that are a lot different, but it felt good and it felt a lot familiar. So I think that's what you're saying here is that, trad Catholics, you can, it's not going to be a big, liturgically, it's not going to be a big leap for you, but
Yeah, and I think maybe what I had in mind there is
yeah,
the what even in the Orthodox Church, it's small, it's very small, but
yeah,
man, I have this dream. I have this dream, Joseph, of a great migration of traditional Latin Rite Catholics uh, becoming Orthodox and embracing the Western Rite. I'm perfectly fine with that. As long as the Western Rite is under an Orthodox bishop and has been approved by an Orthodox bishop, I would love to see that. I would love to see it. I just don't think it will happen because I wasn't born Catholic. It's a little different for me. Um, but the idea of the Pope is so ingrained, in Roman Catholicism. It's like I believe like he's slowly boiling the frog in a kind of a way. It's like turning the heat up a little bit at a time, trying to change the Catholic culture and and suppressing the Latin Mass. Allowing the blessing of gay unions in some countries while firing Orthodox small O Orthodox bishops. He's turning the heat up. Um, but I wonder why. I wonder if it's why doesn't he just turn it all the way up? Because I don't think most Catholics would not leave. They would not leave because the Pope is so central. They would almost just tolerate anything.
I think they would go to like the Sede Vacantis groups, like the Society of Saint Pius the Tenth. So
Maybe,
they
yeah,
they they still believe that they're still Catholic. They're in the Catholic Church, like the Bride of Christ, and no salvation outside the Catholic Church and all that stuff. So I guess they feel like they're fulfilling those things, but
yeah.
they're not
We,
under the boot of him. So
yeah, I don't get those people at all. We had no, we had none of that in our area, so I have no familiarity with them. But it seems like you're
I
kind
do.
of, yeah. It seems like you're kind of Orthodox. It's like it's like you're Catholic
It
without the Pope. I don't
It is.
know.
It's I don't know the headspace that I don't know, I can't figure it out.
Yeah.
Priests in the Roman Catholic Church who oppose the spirit of the age will be blessing gay unions within a decade because the Pope says so. I read that and I was kind of like, probably
Yeah.
because yeah, that's
Well, it's true that a lot of it's I was thinking I have thought a lot about, if I was a priest in the Roman Catholic Church, uh, this is your career. You devoted your a
yeah,
decade of study maybe,
yeah,
and you know you'd have no other life skills.
yeah,
And you and you are under this bishop, who is basically the yes man to the Pope in
yeah,
Rome, and so
yeah.
not a lot of priests would say no. And what the Pope is
Very,
doing,
very few.
and with a lot, yeah, and what he's doing with a lot of this stuff, he's putting the decisions on the priest. Like he's saying, was okay in certain circumstances to do this thing that 10 years ago is unthinkable, but he's making it a decision of the priest. And when the priest decides not to bless this union, right, then it's going to become a news story in the local news. There's going to be pressure on priests, and there's going to be a few sacrificial priests who stand up and they lose their job and they're outcast and they're given, if they even keep their ability to be priests, they're going to be put in some backwater parish, and then they're going to be the ones who, then everybody else is going to know, you get in line, and or this is going to happen to you.
Hmm.
And I feel that that's what's going to happen.
Hmm. I knew a priest that when he was going through the, I don't know what they call it, not discernment he already discerned that he wanted to be priest, but he was in this particular diocese and he was going through the selection process, I guess, to where he would be um, enrolled in the seminary. And one of he told me it was like a litmus test, is that he was asked if, uh, the Pope, if the Pope said you have to concelebrate Mass with this female priest, would you do it? And you had to say yes. So they were, and this was like 20 odd years ago. So even at that time, that's when I think it was JP2, John Paul II, there were certain dioceses who were already looking forward and saying, well, with this group of seminarians, they might one day have to deal with female priests, and we'll select the ones that are okay with it. So
Yeah.
I was like, wow, I couldn't have said yes to
No, I can't.
the
I can't believe that it speaks volumes that that's even a question that's asked, really.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Doctrinal development is anything the current pope says it is. I love that. That's so true
yeah.
because I know the a lot of the Catholic apologists online, you're online too, like I am probably, and you probably see this, but they try to parse everything out. Well, this is a cathedra, ex cathedra. This is what the Pope says. This is what the Pope says, and this is what he doesn't say. And this is official dogma. And this is not official dogma. But when I used to do ministry here in San Francisco with the gays, and when the Pope Francis said, "Who am I to judge?" And that was like one of these he's famous for these off the cuff airplane in flight comments that went like wildfire through the gay community. So that the next Pride parade, I was seeing not a lot, but I saw a few of these T-shirts with the Pope, and it said, "Who am I to judge?" And that became like a big like mantra or whatever, slogan. And so what the Pope says, yeah, has a big impact on everything. And so that was so many years ago. And then in 2018, they started doing same-sex marriages. So there you go.
Yeah. I think what probably was on my mind there was probably October. Yeah, I think that was during the Synod of the Synod. what, what a what a ridiculous thing to have a synod about synodality. It's like we're going to rediscover this thing that the Orthodox Church never lost, but and yeah, it was about the probably the blessing of gay unions, but it goes back to the change of the catechism about the death penalty, for example. I know that riled a lot of traditional
Mhm.
Catholics, and people are like, that issue is so controversial. It's kind of like the perfect issue to hit traditional people over the head with. Like, you want to kill people? Oh, is that what you want to do? So it's a good argument, but they did change church teaching, right? They literally changed the teaching of the church, and the excuse was, doctrinal development. And that's the idea that you hear about how the role of the Pope changed over time. I mean, literally, you cannot be a student of history and not see that papal supremacy was not the teaching of the church in the first 1,000 years. And
Mm,
you had, the the idea of the Pope as supreme authority over all Christians, it changed in the West, yes, over time, but um, you had to have this teaching of doctrinal development in order to justify the teaching of the papacy being, what it is today. And now, once, but in Orthodoxy, you believe like this is the faith once received. This is what we received, and we're going to give it to you. and there's not a place for doctrinal development. There might be a place for some, clarification of language, how we present doctrine, but not doctrinal development. That's not something in Orthodoxy, or shouldn't be.
No.
We have our own troubles. We have some people who would love this idea, but I won't stand for it. Definitely.
Oh man. Anyway, with no papal pushback, bishops in Belgium, Germany, etc., are actively blessing gay unions. Francis moves the goalposts, and Catholics argue about the distance moved. Meanwhile, he's negated field goals altogether. He allowed the blessing of gay unions. Now he has introduced language that will give it papal weight. Yeah, that's true. It, true.
Yeah. Man, you're making me realize how wordy I am.
No, 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 no. I like these tweets.
Well, that's the truth. Is like the online Catholic world is constantly arguing about, what did the Pope really mean, and he'll say something offhand like crazy, and then the next 2 weeks of news cycles are people trying to walk back a statement that the Vatican didn't care to walk back at all. The Pope said it, and the online Catholic world is trying to, make what he says fit in this paradigm that it like you said earlier, when I was Catholic, it was so tiresome. it was, it, but now I look at it and I just shake my head, and I feel sorry for, I know people in the Catholic Church are hurting right now. I
Hmm.
know because I was there, and you were
Hmm.
there, and so many others who have made the decision to become Orthodox were there, and we see how it could be better. We know that they could find peace in the Orthodox Church. I just wish, I just wish I knew, how to do it. Um, the best
I,
thing I think as Orthodox we can do is to love the Lord with
yeah,
all our heart and soul, mind, strength, and to be the best Orthodox Christians that we can be, and be there when these people come, because they're gonna come. Some are gonna come,
I agree.
and we need to be real Christians, really changed by God's grace when they come. That's what's going to happen. And if we're not changed and they come and they just see, unchanged, uh, filthy sin, you know, uh, we need something to offer them, and of course the Orthodox Church does not depend on me, the Orthodox Church, but I need to be changed by God's grace,
Mhm.
and that's what we need.
I think everybody's breaking point is different. For me, yeah, it was like 2018 with McCarrick, and then the gay the gay marriages in Germany. That was it for me. So I
Yeah.
think everybody's different. Some people, I don't know, just can tolerate a lot of nonsense. I couldn't at my stage in life, in my 50s. Having gone the opposite way, I just can't imagine leaving Orthodoxy to be in communion with Rome. Perhaps the Eastern rites are some oasis in chaos, but the Pope is chipping away at his own faithful, endorsing LGBT priests and learning how to be church.
Mhm. Yeah,
Man.
I love when people says they're learning. It was during the start of the synod. We're going to learn to be church. I'm like, I thought the church was the church. Why 2,000 years later you're learning what the church is? So it's kind of like underscoring, the Orthodox Church is the church. We don't have to learn to be church.
Mm,
And I think what probably I had read some Orthodox personality or had become Roman Catholic, and I think after this tweet, a few weeks later, they changed their mind and came back to the church. Thank God they
mm,
repented. But
wow.
when I posted this, it just blew my mind. I just could not imagine leaving Orthodoxy, having been both. I I just can't imagine it. I literally cannot imagine leaving Orthodoxy for the Catholic Church, having now become Orthodox.
Me as well.
Um,
I'm
yeah,
there. I'm there with you. I have helped produce, I like this one. I have helped produce and raise three humans that will hopefully, with God's help, better this world. The joy of fatherhood is that it pulls a man away from selfishness if he allows it. Here's to all the dads. I like that. The joy of fatherhood is that it pulls a man away from selfishness if he allows it. That's good. Uh, that's one of the things I've written on a lot is fathers and fatherhoods, and I think priests in Orthodoxy, because they're typically fathers, husbands and fathers. I think are a good example of that. I think in Catholicism, there's just something missing that it's kind of intangible. I don't know what it is. So I think you do learn, I'm not a father, but I had a father. But I think you do learn something about selflessness in being a father that I think translates really good to being a spiritual father. Just if you're a spiritual father to your own children, but also if you're a spiritual father, to a parish at a church. So I like that.
I have, yep, I have three kids. Two are adults. Got one teenager.
Oh, good for
Uh,
you.
yes, God's been good. And
And
I do agree about the intangibleness of the differences. I have found, and I don't know if this is true to you, that the Catholic priests that I knew that I related to the most were ones who had late vocations,
yeah,
like they had lived, life
yeah.
either in the military or in
Mm.
career, and then came to the priesthood later. But a lot of the priests that enter seminary as a very young man, and it's I don't know what it is, but they're so different. They are very different. Um,
Especially, I have to say, in the traditional movement, sometimes there's a bit of coddling, a bit of like an insular attitude that I was off-putting. And you're right. I related better to priests who were later that entered the priesthood in their 30s, some of them like even in their early 40s. So
yeah,
yeah, yeah. I think I wanted to show some. Oh, no, I've got one more. I'm a family man, but I work with and know. Oh, I liked this one. This one was really good. I'm a family man, but I work with and know many younger men who are foregoing family, leading very superficial lives. I told someone I had these kids. They said halfway, joking, "That's unfortunate. You'd have more money without them." I wanted to say how sad I felt for them. That was really good.
yeah,
Um, that's uh, kind of an epidemic among young men nowadays. I mean, marrying very late, if marrying at all,
yeah.
and then not, if they do marry, not wanting children.
Well, our whole culture is like, well, everybody's like, what's it going to hurt to, have gay marriage? I'm like, well, you're you're weakening the institution of marriage, and I think we're seeing the fruit of that. No one's getting married, anyone, and no one's getting married. No one's. I worry about my own children. Thank God, my two boys who are adults, they have girlfriends. There's hope. So, uh, I, it's almost to a point where I want to start like matchmaking with young men I know. I'm like, we got to do something to get these young men in relationships. Well, society can't exist without families, and
Yeah.
I really do think that it's part of a plan, really.
Uh,
Like, yeah,
you're right.
and
It's interesting that there's orthodoxy. There's a lot of like younger single guys coming to orthodoxy, and it seems like a lot of them are very um they're interested in in finding a a wife and starting a family, but it seems to be there's a shortage of, ladies, but there seems to be a lot of single men in Orthodoxy, which I find interesting. Uh,
Yeah, I really do think, there's this movement for deaconesses in the Orthodox Church, and
oh,
I'm totally against that. But I do think
no.
there's got to be something. I think reaching young women, something is appealing to young men about Orthodoxy. We have several. I mean, we are a very small mission, very small, not even a full-time priest, but we baptized 7 people this year.
Wow,
We
awesome.
have we currently have 5 catechumens right now and
Wow.
several in choirs. There's something happening, but a ministry to young women, more social media outreach to young women. They don't know what they don't know and what they're missing, and orthodoxy's the truth. And whenever I see um, young people searching for truth, that's why I love Saint. Well, almost called him a saint, but Father Seraphim Rose so much because I think he appeals to a lot of young people. He's timeless, really, in a lot of what he says. But I agree, we need more young women in the Orthodox Church. I don't know the answer to that, but
I don't know. That's for somebody else to figure out.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Oh, I like this one too. I tire of hearing people complain about, quote, angry young men, unquote, coming to church because of what they're finding on the internet. I guess you'd rather they not show up at all. Decorum isn't as important as desperation. Give them what they need. I really like that. That's where I talk about why I liked your take on things, because you're truthful and and
Yeah, it gets me really angry when people like
but
attack people like Jay Dyer or someone like that.
well, he came to mind. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many young men and women. Oh, and there's this one lady at church who she was received. She's in her 60s, and she told me that Jay Dyer was formative in her becoming Orthodox. And I see, they really attack people like him, and he's not perfect. I'm not perfect. You're not perfect. No one's perfect. But this whole idea that we don't want those kind of people. Oh man, it just makes me upset. If they get them in the door and then give them orthodoxy, that's what we should be doing. Give them the truth.
I'm not comparing anybody to John the Baptist, but John the Baptist was gruff, you know,
Yeah,
and you have to take the people as they come in through the door. You can't pick and choose. God calls who he's going to call. He called me, and you know, I was a disaster. So,
yeah,
he calls who he's going to call. And
that's right.
oh, I forgot my what I was going to say. But I actually I haven't noticed. I don't know if this, because sometimes there's false memes that, and they're kind of like psyops, where people kind of come up with this stuff. Well, like angry young men. I actually haven't seen that. I've actually seen young men who are sort of confused, wandering, really zealous to like understand something and
Yeah,
have something solid and real in their life. I don't see them so much as angry, but being just very lost souls.
yeah.
So
I
uh
think that's true, but I do think there's this. I think one of the jurisdictions had a survey, and they were trying to understand, converts and trying to understand why they were being drawn. And it was almost like, they were you know they want people coming, but they don't want them coming in this way. And because maybe but it doesn't bother me when someone comes to church. If someone comes to church and they have a lot of questions, or treat them. That's what coffee hour is for. I love the Orthodox coffee hour.
yeah.
Sit down with them and talk to them and guide them. It should be our responsibility as Orthodox Christians to help people navigate the Orthodox Church. And
Yeah.
I love the fact that the first time I showed up to church many years ago, this old lady came and gave me a divine liturgy book. She stood beside me. She helped me understand what was going on. And then she talked to me after service. That's what we should be doing. And that's one of the great things that happens in most Orthodox churches. Now, I don't have a lot of experience with other Orthodox churches, but most of the ones I've come to is like the fellowship aspect is like multiple times
I agree.
more than anything I've ever experienced, even in the Protestant churches I grew up with. It's just tremendous.
I
So
agree. I agree. I can kind of relate to Jay Dyer because I don't speak for him, but I don't even know him. But when you do a sort of ministry or you have a kind of apostolate, whatever it is on social media or whatever. I had a social media apostolate and a real world one, and you put a lot of time into a lot of effort, a lot of work, and you're tearing your heart out, and you're putting it out there for people, and then you get pushback from your own church. It's very painful and it hurts because that's what happened to me when I was a Catholic, is that I was doing a ministry that I thought was needed, and then you get all this pushback from the church, and it's kind of like you just kind of throw your hands up in the air and say, I've had enough. So you do
mhm.
get upset. And then one of the things you said about the lay people in Orthodoxy is true. I mean, I was baptized last December, and I was going to my church about a year prior. I know the people in 2 years. I know the people better at my church than from 20 years of going to the Catholic Church. 20 years.
Yeah,
Catholics kind of, not that Orthodox people don't come late, but, Catholic people kind of run into the church late and run out early. And, they don't, it's not a strong sense of community at all. Even I have to say in um, the traditional Catholic world too. And I kind of, even in the traditional Catholic world, I kind of didn't want to hang around afterwards because it was so much of this, um, I don't want to say complaining, but so much of this discussion about what the Pope or the bishop was doing in terms of
yeah,
the Latin Mass. And I was like, I don't want to hear it. And I have to say that where I've been around Orthodox people, I haven't seen that. I don't know. I don't think there's that much to complain about. Maybe the Ukraine war a little bit, but
hmm
even that, no, no. There isn't the obsession, the fixation. Well, they don't have a pope. So there isn't that obsession on the hierarchy I have seen.
yeah,
I
definitely
rarely,
not.
yeah, I don't see it. I mean, the bishop seems like a good guy, or the metropolitan, but it doesn't seem like he has his hands in everything all the time like you do in the Catholic Church.
Yes, definitely, I agree.
Let me see. I have a couple of funny pictures that, oh, I wish they were funny. So this is what we all left in the Catholic Church. I just wanted your quick reaction to this. This is Catholic Charities of the East Bay, which is here in the Bay Area. So it's kind of like Oakland, Berkeley, that area diocese. So June 4th, love is love.
And that's 2 years ago. Wow.
Love,
How did I not see that? That's oh,
love
it's
is
painful. It's
love is
painful.
love.
I it just pains me to see that. It really does. Um, oh,
How about this?
I've
Now
seen
this
you
is
post this
now
before.
this is not Germany. This is United States. This is I can't remember. I think it's Saint. I don't care. They can sue me. This is Saint Francis Xavier. I'm pretty sure Catholic Church in New York City. So here, I mean, describe it how you want to describe it. It's two guys and a priest giving them their blessing. And this is a few years ago. And I got this photo. I was trying to share it with priests
Yeah.
From New York, and they just kind of shrug their shoulders and go like, "What do you want me to do?" The bishop
Yeah.
okayed
Yeah. The bishops supposedly, Dolan is Dolan, right?
Yeah.
It's conservative, and then uh, who's the bishop in San Francisco?
Oh, Corleone.
Yeah, supposedly a conservative, but
No,
what does it matter? I mean, if you allow this, then you're not a conservative at all. There's just no way. How can you do this?
they can't. Uh, People ask me a lot of times. I mean, there was there's it's multifaceted why I became Orthodox, but like it or not, I would say about 50% of Catholic priests are homosexual, not necessarily active homosexual, but definitely homosexual in identity and inclination, and also in their sympathies. So the Orthodox Church is nowhere near that. I don't know what it is, 0.01%. I mean, I don't know. So you just don't, I haven't seen this issue there's certainly like pro-gay factions, like the Fordham people, who of course are
Mhm.
supported by the Jesuits, who are the most homosexual of the homosexuals in the Catholic Church.
Mhm.
But I got tired of dealing with this, especially in San Francisco, where it's just everywhere. And I don't have to deal
Yeah.
with it in the Orthodox Church.
I don't know who coined the phrase Fordhamites, but I want to shake their hand. It's just such a great way to like peg them exactly
Fordham,
what they are. Yeah.
Fordham, my father,
Fordhamites.
Father Whiteford or somebody. I don't
It's
know.
probably Father John Whiteford. Yeah. He's great.
I love him too. Oh, here we go. So here we have Pride Mass. I want to share this with you. So when I was discerning with Orthodoxy, I went to the priest and I said, "Father, am I ever going to see the rainbow flag inside this church?" And he said, "Over my dead body." I said, "Okay, I'm in. I'm in. I'm in."
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this is what I was dealing with in Joseph.
My gosh. Yeah. I have had similar experiences with the Orthodox priests that I've known. Being in Mississippi, which is a very small Orthodox community,
Yeah.
growing but small, and I don't travel an awful lot. So I've only been in a handful of actual churches, but every priest in the Orthodox Church that I've encountered, I have traveled to a couple of monasteries as well,
Mm,
have been so rock solid. You know, uh, they're all different, different personalities. They're not, cookie cutter men, but they're men, and um, they I can they're so appealing, when you see men live their faith, you know, and I'm very grateful for men like Father uh, Alexis Baldwin,
I love him.
who received me into the church in 2019. So
Small
very,
world.
very grateful.
And
Yeah.
it seems like in you might know, I mean maybe Father Alexis is a good example. Is it in Catholicism priests, I'm not saying priests that get up every Sunday and give like a hell and brimstone, sermon about or cohabitation, abortion, pornography, whatever. I'm talking about just a priest who may mention a controversial topic occasionally. In Catholicism, they're punished, and nobody can argue with me on that. They're punished by their bishop because bishops don't want to get one call to the chancery. And but it seems like in Orthodoxy, priests that stand up for the truth are not punished. I mean, I had a priest, very good priest, who I interviewed, Catholic priest, you know, and he said, "Joe, you got to cut out certain things, not that he said, but that I said, because just him being there and me saying something, I had to cut it out. So that's a big difference. That it feels like Orthodox priests who want to speak the truth are not punished, but they're supported. So
Yeah, that is true. I've seen Catholic priests. I it was less true in the diocese that I was in. But all of a sudden he might get assigned to uh, the the boonies, out in the boondocks. He would be reassigned if he was and I had a friend that was a Catholic priest. He got in trouble for trying to stop people from holding hands during the Our Father. It's like trying to be more traditional, but people complain, and the bishop picks up the phone and it's like, why are you causing them all this trouble? And
exactly.
and then you find out as a priest that it's not worth it because you don't have the backing of your bishop. So
Yeah. So I feel like in Orthodoxy, I'm in a much healthier place with healthier people. In Catholicism, it felt like there was a lot of fear. I don't know, that's kind of I was going to say confusion, but not. I say the overwhelming emotion that I felt was just fear. Fear either that the TLM would be, the traditional Latin Mass would be taken away from people, or just fear of what's going to, especially in priests, fear of, I'd never met a priest that had a good thing to say about their bishop. It was always that they just kind of feared him.
yeah,
So, and that's not a healthy environment. And that, that like radiates to other people. And then it's not good. It's not good. So
yeah.
thank you for spending, oh, I always have time management problem, but thank you for spending so much time with me. And I do encourage people to follow Joseph on Twitter because he always has a good he always has a good take on things. It's pretty reliable. It's not crazy.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Joseph, for having me. I appreciate it. I've followed you for years. I followed you when you were Catholic.
Oh, really? Wow.
Oh yes, yes.
So
So
I think our journey was kind of parallel. So
mhm.
it's good.
Yes.
It's good people are here. So, and
One day I'll get to San Francisco and we can meet.
I love it.
I, I want to make a pilgrimage to St. John Maximovich. Yeah.
It's beautiful. I try to go about once a month because I don't know if you call it a crypt, but they have the shrine. And well, it's more than a shrine because his body is there, but the cathedral is is such a holy place too, because kind of my patron in Orthodoxy is Father Sephiroth Rosen. He was there a lot. He had the bookstore down the road, and then as the cathedral was being built, and he was there, I guess, till 1969, and then they moved. But so that city that has such a bad reputation, though, is imbued with a lot of Orthodox holiness. So right there, it's very cool.
One day.
One day, all right.
Yep.
God bless you, Joseph.
Thank you.